Good evening, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining us again for another lovely, exciting edition of Raising Vibration Radio and Journey into Consciousness. I am one of your hosts, Reverend Raven. Tammy Lacente is our other host, and of course, we have a special guest, Tom Coates. Tammy, go ahead and take it away.
Good evening, everyone. We're on to week 3 of the Michael charts with Tom Coates. Thank you again for joining us. And good evening, Tom.
Good evening. Glad to be back. Thank you.
Thank you. So we left off with we were going through the essences, and we had gone through all of the roles. And we were moving on to the essence twin. I don't know if you want to recap the roles really quick.
I'll recap a little bit, and I want to also the first couple of weeks we spent most of the time on the Michael planes, just to reorient people. We are all in the physical plane, but in the Michael framework, you have 6 planes of what Michael calls planes of form. They're the physical, the astral, the causal, the higher mental, the messianic, and the Buddhaic. And as you go through those planes, each one is more at a higher frequency, more rarefied than the one before it. And in Michael's teaching, you go through a cycle, which Michael refers to as a grand cycle, where you have some connection with all those planes, one after the other, and you go through as we were going through the Michael reading chart, which is a chart that's put out by one of the number of Michael channels, but this particular one is about Shepherd Hoodwin, who lives in Southern California, I think in Laguna Niguel, in south of LA, and Shepherd devised this chart a number of years ago. I think he's been using it for at least 25 years maybe. And what he does is when people send photographs of themselves, is that he requests a chart, he will do a channeling with Michael and then fill in these features on this chart, which in theory is being done by the Michael group itself. As I mentioned previously, the Michael group is a soul group consisting of approximately 1,050 souls or soul fragments or essences, and all the soul fragments within the Michael that comprise the Michael group previously had incarnate cycles on Earth, and in the Michael lore, all but one of those fragments completed its cycle of physical incarnations by about 500 AD, about 1,500 years ago. Apparently, there was one straggler in the group who cycled off after a lifetime in the second half of the 14th century as an Italian doctor, and he was deeply involved in helping people with bubonic plague, or what was thought to be in retrospect bubonic plague. It was just known as the Black Death in the second half of the starting around 1350 or something like that, and in Italy and then all over Europe, and over the course of several decades, roughly a third of the European population died. In any event, that was the last one, and I want to reiterate too that whatever I say here on this show or the others, if anybody listens to the recording, and am I correct that Tammy or Sandy, that anyone who wishes to can go back and play the recordings from the earlier sessions of last week and the week before?
Sandy?
Yeah, so that is available on Facebook, on Raising Vibration Facebook page, or
Okay.
YouTube, or you can listen on Anchor FM or Spreaker. We're all over the place. So you can
All right.
listen by audio or you can watch the video. So the
Right.
video is right here on Raising Vibration Radio page, Facebook page,
Hmm.
or the Raising Vibration Radio YouTube channel.
Okay. All right. So
And
it's
it
not
will
necessary.
soon be on a Journey into Consciousness channel as well.
Great. Okay. Well, I just wanted to, for anybody who may be listening and doesn't know whether it could be heard later, I want to bring that up. But I would also like to reiterate what I've said previously, which I like to sort of use as a preamble for most any talk I give on most any subject. I ask people who listen to whatever I have to say, please do not believe what I tell you as if it is a fact. You don't need to disbelieve it or believe it, um, but be very careful with what you believe in. Beliefs are structures of consciousness that either expand or contract your ability to do things. And the Michael teachings are simply a framework for interpreting information and experience. And to the extent that they can be expansive for people, then that they can be very useful. I would say, and it's been said to me by other sources of spiritual information at the level of Michael or even beyond, that the Michael teachings as such are kind of to this the spiritual landscape as adding, subtracting, multiplication, and division are to my mathematics as a whole. These are, in other words, they're very basic. They're in a sense you could call them foundational structures, but they are nothing to they're not. There should be the beginning of one's quest and not the end point. And so that I would say that they can be useful, but the landscape of spirit, to my in my experience, is far more complex, multidimensional, and grand than one might gather from some of the Michael teachings. That's not to knock the teachings because they can be very useful, but don't take them as a catechism or something to memorize because this is the way it is. This is the perspective of one group, and there are many other perspectives out there. And I invite everyone who is interested to listen to this and listen but don't let it be the end of your search or your quest.
Exactly.
So,
I've used it very much like stepping stones to
mhm.
broadening my my pilgrimage, if you will,
Right.
not holding on too tightly, but found a lot of it very informational and useful in identifying things in myself and how I show up and what I'm moving towards. And as we're going to cover more as we go through the essence and all the different roles.
Yeah, I would in the context of beliefs, I use the term frameworks for uh, and that's what the Michael teachings are. They're framework in which to interpret experience and information and so forth. Every belief
Mm-hmm.
is something. It does the same thing, and a framework by its very nature has boundaries. And so if you're there's a tendency once one gets establishes a belief to try to interpret whatever one experiences within that framework. And oftentimes we will have experiences that cannot be interpreted in an appropriate way with, by an existing belief. We have to create new ones or let go of old ones and so forth. Another analogy I'm fond of in using in regard to beliefs is that of a ladder, climbing a ladder. Each rung on the ladder is a belief is like each rung on the ladder, and you cannot get beyond the one you're on until you take your foot and put it on the next rung. And in order to do that, in the context of beliefs, that means oftentimes letting go of the ones you have.
That's exactly what I've experienced through my
Right.
life. Yes.
So, and we get attached to beliefs, so there's sometimes they're very hard to let go of. But anyway, that's enough said about that for the moment. But I do think I keep on coming back to it because I think in every time this is an important issue in a time where things are changing as rapidly as they're changing in our own time. It's more important than ever. And we see in our society, not only in the United States, but around the world, that there's great polarization among various peoples that are because they're stuck in different belief systems. And in each, they're like tribal groups. And the vibration of tribal consciousness was useful once upon a time, but it's not very useful in the world we live in today. And so that's 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 just another glaring example of the kind of issues I'm talking about. Okay, moving on to the Michael reading chart. Can we get that up on the screen,
It
Sandy?
is.
Oh, really? Why is it not showing up on mine? Huh.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to touch anything for fear that I will do something cause some problems. So I'll just take it as I'll believe that what you've told me that it's there. So,
I
um,
think it's on page 2. Is that correct, Sandy? I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
and don't believe anything.
all right. Yes, item 2 in the list of things that I gave you, Sandy. Is that's up on screen?
That
Yes.
is correct.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Well, last week we went through the top line of this thing, and as I stated when we got on this chart last week, um, the top half of the chart is relates to the what Michael refers to as the essence, the soul essence, and that is these items in the top half, it should be stated, are consistent and they're the same across all lifetimes within a given cycle of lifetimes. And so uh, these these aspects that are denoted there are not ones that will change during a lifetime, and they're not ones that will change um, uh, between one lifetime and the next within a given cycle. And as I said, under the Michael teachings, going through all the planes that we discussed is a grand cycle. The average person on Earth, according to Michael, has had a history of 4 grand cycles, of completing 4 grand cycles before embarking on the current one. And my experience is that many people that I've encountered have many more cycles than that, and I say many more, anywhere from 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, um, and and I'm told I can't verify it other than what I've heard from Michael is that there are many beings in the closer to the galactic center on planets that would be, say, we're 23,000 light years from the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and that if you get into planets that are half that distance, say 10,000 light years from the galactic center, there are many beings that have, according to Michael, and I'm not sure whether Michael knows this or just speculates on this, but that have many more grand cycles than most anyone on Earth. Um, and perhaps that's true, and perhaps it's not. I just throw it out for information that Michael has provided from time to time. Um, the As I indicated last week, that as you look at the top of the reading chart, you see four four classifications, and these are referred to by Michael as axes or each one is an axis: the inspiration axis, the expression axis, the action axis, and the assimilation axis. Each of the first three has what Michael refers to as an ordinal and a cardinal aspect. The ordinal being the more routine, the more normal, regular, whatever you want to call it. The cardinal being the one that uh, incorporates more extremes uh, and so forth. And so the roles that are, just to recap, the roles come under those, and under the inspiration axis you have server and priest. Server being the ordinal component, priest being the cardinal component, and both of these are groups of these will be seen people who are animated by a soul essence which has a role of server will be inspired to help other people. People who are animated by a soul essence which is a priest, by in terms of its role, will be inspired not only to help other people, but they'll be inspired to believe generally that they know how things should be done, and they'll be inspired to tell other people how to do it in a very sometimes very insistent way. Uh, that's not bad, but it, it's a more intense level of energy than the server. Um, the artist, the expression axis is represented in the ordinal aspect by artisan, which would be typified by an artist, and or a sculptor or something like that, or many people in the theater are artisans. Um, and also the cardinal aspect is sage. Many people in the theater would be sages as well. Not so many sages would be famous artists, however. And you don't have to be an artisan to be an artist, but if you are an artisan and you're an artist, it's because you're just driven to do this. And um, it always interested me a bit that the sage is shown as the more cardinal aspect of the expressive axis, perhaps because sages are more prone to communicate with words, where artisans are more prone to communicate with with imagery and so forth. But and uh, and then in the action axis, you have the ordinal aspect is warrior, whose instinct is to protect the hearth and the home front and so forth. Um, I would venture a guess that if you did a Michael chart reading on all the members of the Secret Service, that you would find a disproportionately large number that would be warriors.
Warriors.
You
Exactly.
certainly would find it in military as well, but the Secret Service is fairly well typifies its mission to protect the president and to protect the currency, um, as an agency of the Treasury, is right on the money with what a warrior energy is about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the and then the king is the cardinal aspect, and the most significant um, the most significant in my mind two features of kings is that they can be, and more so than probably other roles, are sort of natural leaders, and sometimes charismatic, sometimes not, but always sort of having a sense of authority built within them that many others do not have.
So
And
So
Hitler was a king, right?
I'm sorry.
Hitler was a king.
Uh, I don't recall that whether it was or not. I was. frankly thinking he might have been a priest, but I don't remember.
Oh, you don't
Tom,
remember? Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, I was just going to ask you, can you name a couple of kings that you're aware of that the public would be able to recognize?
Donald Trump would be one.
Yeah.
Most people can recognize him. Now, Donald Trump is, he is a young 3 or 4 or 5 king, and it's interesting that here's a guy who ran for president, never having run for office in his life, and and uh, and had no doubt in his mind apparently, even though he apparently ran for president as best I've been able to piece together, primarily in order to boost the ratings on his TV show, and without any expectation or even any desire really to win in a authentic way, and then when he did win, though he apparently had little doubt that he knew better than anybody else how to run the country, and so that would be consistent with king energy, even though I would say there was a lot of negative poll aspect within the Trump presentation. Um, Jesus Christ is another example of a king in a more positive pole, um, and so and he was an old 7 king, I believe, his primary fragment, and maybe more than one, as I think I mentioned in one of the previous sessions. My information is that Jesus was actually animated by 8 fragments,
Yeah.
and that the primary was an old king, I think a 7, which is the highest level, and that there were more than one. There was more than one king fragment within the array, and so he had a lot going for him in the king vein, and was able to engage that king energy at the a very very high level. Excuse me. Any other questions on that, Tammy?
Nope, I'm good.
And then the last one is scholar. The scholar's, a college professor, absent-minded college professor who's got piles and piles of books around his office and so forth. It would be an atypical scholar, probably in a positive pole. A negative pole would be a hoarder, in
So,
which, as I said, probably most of a disproportionate large number of the hoarders in the world probably are scholars.
Tom, so
Huh?
let me just ask this. Inspiration, expression, and action, did they have the moving parts where you can go between both, and assimilation scholar doesn't? Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
In the roles under inspiration, expression, and action, you have the cardinal and the ordinal. So they have moving parts, and scholar doesn't, right? It just stays in scholar.
Well,
Or
when you say moving parts, I don't know what you're
don't.
referring to.
Like, so between server and priest, if you were to come up a priest, wouldn't you also, you have server tendencies too, but more predominantly it would be priest, or no? Is that a misunderstanding on
No,
my
no.
part?
You're going to be either a server or a priest, not both.
Oh, so I was misunderstanding that.
Right, right.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, the server is just a more muted version of the same axis of energy, the inspiration axis. The priest is the more inspired, and specifically inspired, to tell others, to know more than others about how life should be lived and all that sort of thing. Whereas the server is primary interest is in simply helping people.
Serving. Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so that's a recap, but probably a necessary one for the rest of it is any. And as I said, you can have, as mentioning with his situation with Jesus, having had 8 fragments animating his life, well, 8 different essences. Um, no matter how many you have, you're going to have one primary, and that's going to be the lens through which all the others are going to be operating for the lifetime. And so if that's a priest, then there could be 3 or 4 others that they're all going to operate through that lens. It's a little bit like a dance, where the fragments or essences will get together for the life and say, here's my dance card. Who wants to join me in this endeavor? And we're going to dance to no matter what it is, but it's going to be the tune is going to be called by the one who's the primary fragment, if that makes sense. All right, so moving to the next line, that was the first line was roll on the left-hand side of the page there.
Mm-hmm.
The next line was what Michael refers to as essence twin, and so when this chart is filled out, we have nothing but blanks here now. But you have these little circles to the left of each of the roles and so forth. When the chart is filled out, one of those will be checked, and so the person may be a sage or may be any one of these things. The next line, essence twin, these are all blank too. What the essence twin, according to Michael, and I don't know whether this is absolutely true or not. It's not a teaching that I'm aware of coming from other sources. But according to Michael, when sparks are cast from the Tao, as Michael calls it, when souls leave the Tao and embark on a cycle of incarnations, according to Michael, they are cast in pairs, and so the essence twin is that other essence or fragment that is cast simultaneously with the one at the top, and they may or may not know each other from lifetime to lifetime, but and they may not progress at the same rate, but they will apparently, according to Michael, be at least at the level of soul essence. They will remain in contact throughout the cycle of incarnation, and so the essence twin will have its own role, and that's why the role here, you have the same array of roles, and when this chart is filled out, beneath that line there will be an added statement that says incarnate you know him or you know her, or incarnate, no plans to meet, or something like that. There'll be a statement there, or it will say discarnate.
Mm-hmm.
And the key aspect there is that, according to Michael teachings, if your essence twin is not incarnated during your lifetime, then it will most likely be involved as one of your spirit guides, at least at the upper levels and perhaps even at the lower levels of soul evolution. And so that's why the role of the essence twin will be significant, because the the role of that essence twin will be fairly deeply imprinted into the consciousness of the human, almost as if it were his or her own soul, because of the closeness between the essence twin at the essence level and one's own essence or soul. And I, I'll give an example of that. My my late wife had a essence twin that was an old two something or other, and the connection was close enough, according to another source, that when the chart was done of my wife, the Michael itself misread the energy of the essence twin as the energy of my wife's own soul, and confused that as part of what her soul age and role was.
Oh, that's interesting. So
Yeah.
how was that discussed? Like, how did even the dialogue of that come up? Did
Well, it came up because when I saw it, I was confused. It was a soul age issue, and I was confused by it, and I consulted another group, and that's the information I got. So, and it was, and the information I got was, it was a mistake that was easily made because the connection was so close. It was energetically difficult to tell one from the other.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that's I say that to indicate the significance of the essence twin, the significance the essence twin can have, particularly if it is not, if the twin is not incarnated while you are, and the twin is serving as a spirit guide. So,
Okay.
all right. And any questions on that, Tammy or Sandy?
No, I'm good. I'm really enjoying this. I feel like I'm all of them at the same time myself, but that's just my ego. So
Yeah. Well, the ego is not on the chart, but if we
I
get
know.
into the lower part, there are aspects that will point some of that up. The next line is what Michael refers to as cadence position. Now, cadence position is, according to Michael, I don't know whether I talked about this last week or not at all, but according to Michael, you not only are cast in pairs, but there are groups that are sent out together, and they're sort of like rifle squads in the infantry of the army or something, where you send out a rifle squad that has not 10 or 11 guys in it, and well, used to be guys. I guess maybe it can be women too now. And you've got a radio operator. You might have a medic. You might have a forward observer, and everybody has some kind of a role. And so, in the cadence that Michael organizes things at the soul level in a somewhat regimented, militaristic way. At least that's my interpretation of it. Others might differ from my statement on that. But in any event, what is indicated there is that when you're in a what Michael refers to as a cadence, and if let's say, as in my case, my primary role is that of a sage. and and yet in the cadence, my role is that you're assigned a role that may or may not correspond to your actual the essence role, and so in the cadence, my role is scholar. In fact, there are layers of you can see cadence position, then you see cadence, then you see greater cadence, and these are all number sequences in Michael, and I won't get into the numbers because honestly, I find them a bit boring, and I don't want to bore anybody else with them either. But the but in any event, in my own case, I am I've got what is referred to as triple scholar casting in terms of this these cadence positions, and so that itself will have a significant influence on one's tendencies, um, and it can create some degree of confusion as to what one's real role is. And as a for instance, um, even though I am a a sage, my role as sage, given my all of my scholar casting, I have always been a collector of things, not so much. I mean, what one example is collecting books, and I've got a library of about 15,000 books, um, far more than I ever would need, but it's just one of those things, and it's be, and it's because of that damn cadence casting that I that
You know
as
what? I
scholar.
must have the same problem, Tom, because I keep ordering books, but I never read them, but I just love their vibration. It's
Yeah,
Sandy,
well,
did you have Scholar in yours? Do you have your chart out?
I can find it. I'll find it and I'll put it up here in a minute. But
No, don't
yeah,
put it up. Did you? I was just curious
I
because you
don't
probably
remember.
do.
I don't remember.
well,
Maybe because I got 10,000 books.
yeah. Before I ever had my first reading, I thought pretty surely I must have been a scholar, even though I never was much of a student in school. But I was just because of my tendency to collect things, and and so that's what scholars do. That's on what Michael refers to as the assimilation axis, where a scholar will walk through a room and stuff will just stick to them. That's just if it's just stuff, and my brother is an actual scholar, and he's got uh, he's got a basement filled with books, boxes upon boxes of books. Um, he's got uh, he's got all sorts of furniture jammed into his house that he can barely walk around, and it's because of that all that scholar energy that he's got. So anyway, that's that's the any questions on that before we move on to the next line?
So you don't want to go into the different numbers and that we're going past that, right?
The numbers that are in those things.
Yes.
Well, the numbers that are there, the numbers that are there are numbers that is a numbering system Michael uses for the various uh, servers 1, artisan 2, warrior 3, um, scholar 4, right in the middle. In other words, if you were to line up the energies in terms of intensity levels, this is the way Michael perceives they would go. Um, that's essentially what those numbers mean. Uh, so that's a numbering system that relates to the relative intensity of the energy of the individuals that manifest or that are guided by these particular roles. So uh, so server would be the least um, intense. Uh, Artist would be the next least. warrior would be the next least, and then and then scholar, and then sage, and then priest, and then king. Is that any further about that?
So looking at
Excuse me.
my own chart,
Uh,
my role is sage, my essence twin is discarnate priest, my cadence is 1, which would be server, and my greater cadence is 4, which would be scholar.
yeah, and what these numbers represent, what Michael refers to as cadence positions. Okay, so I'm a sage, but my cadence position is sage is number 5, but my cadence position is number 4 because it's scholar. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that's the energetically that the other thing applies too. Um, so, um, all right, moving down to the next line there, which is cadre and entity. Um, Michael has a numbering system. Anybody who's ever in the military, which I was, um, you're assigned to a unit which has a like the 101st Airborne, 82nd Airborne, 10th Mountain Division, um, 1st Armored Cavalry, all just different things. And so Michael does the same thing with with, uh, with this cadre and entity thing. And honestly, I don't. This is to me about the least significant piece of all this stuff on the chart. And the reason I say that is, historically, Michael's students have felt a sense of say camaraderie with
Yeah.
people who were in their own cadre and even in their own entity. The entity is a smaller assembly, which is like in the case of Michael, 1,050, and generally, according to Michael, 1,050 to 1,100 souls, and um, and and so people have had the ability to again feel some sense of camaraderie with people who were animated by souls that were they were in the same entity of the same cadre and so forth. And well, the reason that I've got a couple of reasons for not paying much attention to it. One is that having served in the military and having been in different units, I mean, it's great when you're there, but unless you went through something like the Omaha Beach Normandy invasion together, just the fact that somebody was in your unit doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Um, and and secondly, more importantly, we are in a time of increasing complexity in the array of essences that are animating human beings. The Michael teachings are predicated on an assumption that a person will be animated by only one essence or fragment. Historically, according to my information from other sources, and I actually have gotten corroboration from this from Michael, there was about 1% of the population going back thousands of years that might have had more than one fragment, one essence that was animating them, operating, as I said, through the lens of the primary, but nevertheless more than one. And this now is an increasingly prevalent phenomenon. The incidence of it today is I believe, between 10 and 15%, and um, and that's something that has increased from roughly 1% from the time I was born until now.
And what do
Uh,
you think that's attributed to?
I'm told that that's attributed to the desire, the plan, the intention of creation to add levels, increasing levels of complexity
Mm-hmm.
to and this is apparently not something that's happening. According to my information, again, you can't. It's this information and a couple of bucks will buy you a cup of coffee.
Right.
But but according to my information, uh, the uh, uh, the numbers of souls over the next century or so, maybe a century to a century and a half, will get to a point where every single human on Earth is animated by multiple fragments, multiple essences. And so what I refer to as a multi-fragment composite soul. And and what that will mean is that um, the reading for each of those individuals will include multiple different reading pages for the top half of what we have here of the Michael reading chart because each essence will require separate, have a potentially separate role, separate essence twin, separate cadence position, separate cadre entity, and all these other things. There'll only be one personality involved, but there will be multiple aspects animating that personality, and and so it makes it sort of if you've got somebody who's animated by half dozen or more uh, essences, trying to identify with the cadre or entity of each one is a little pointless, seems to me, because each one will be from it will have its own configuration, and they're all just as legitimately associated with the person as the primary. Is that does that answer your question?
Yeah. So I'm sitting here taking this in and trying to imagine if it was the first time that I was hearing this, and how I would interpret that maybe. So having multiple fragments going through one lens might seem like, oh, is that a person that just has like multiple personalities and what have you? But you
No.
yourself have multiple fragments, and we so maybe you can expand a little bit more on what that's like to, like, and how you experience it, and you still just experience your life as Tom Coates.
Right. These are, it's as if I referred to it as a sort of a dance a few minutes ago,
Mm-hmm.
and and what it means is that each of the fragments is for the life of the individual is dancing to the same tune. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
be adding layers of complexity to the perspective of the individual. They're going to be adding layers of sort of internal resource, um, um, and I mean, I have one example that, and I've had debates with various of the Michael channels about this, and there is no there's no
Concrete.
final word on it, and
Yeah.
it's not something that Michael is learning about this now itself, and so it doesn't have any final word on this stuff either. But um, but as a for instance, in the um, I may have even brought this up before, but in the final illness of my late wife, she was paralyzed and was this was 9 years ago. She was in a pretty extreme condition from cancer and I had to, in terms of the care, we had a daytime nursing uh, care, semi nurse's aide type, and then I would be with her at night, um, and and I would never have imagined that I was capable of the kind of support that I ended up being able to provide for her during that last several months of her life, and uh, and I really believe that in my own situation that it was made easier for me by virtue of the fact that one of my ancillary fragments is a server,
Yeah.
and and it was as if that server fragment was somehow engaged in ways that were beyond the imagination of my perspective as a sage, and so I think it's that kind of thing can be added. It's not going to make a different personality
So
out of
did
you.
it feel
Yeah.
to you on some level like that aspect just kind of took over on like automatic pilot for you?
Well, I don't know whether you call it automatic pilot, um, but
Meaning you had an ability to know how to do things and be able to be in a way that you couldn't have conceived that you would have been able to. I'm just curious. I'm not trying to
yeah, I
put
mean,
words in your
my
mouth.
wife was my wife. Just to be, I don't want to get too far into the weeds on this, but she was incontinent for the last several months of her life as a
Mm,
result of being
mm,
paralyzed, and so that created all kinds of cleanup needs and so forth and so on that honestly I never would have dreamed in a million years I would have been capable of providing
hmm.
for her needs in that regard, but it turned out I was. And
Yeah.
it was as if I were pulling resources that I didn't have any idea in the world that I had. And I think that's how I was able to interpret
Hmm.
what was going on. Um, so, and again, I've had debates with Michael Channels about this. Frankly, most of the Michael channels are not very friendly to the idea of the multi-fragment composite soul because it makes things more complicated and it screws up all these wonderful linear numbering systems and progressions that so many Michael students have gotten so attached to. Um, and but over time, if the information I've been given is correct, and by the way, the information I've been given about this is that this is not just happening on Earth. This is happening across
Hmm.
this universe. And
Multidimensional. Yeah.
right. That every planet, whether it's here in Andromeda or any other galaxy, is going through the
Hmm.
same kind of transition. So, and this is something that's sort of been ordered up from Source Creation Central, the Dial, whatever it should be called. And so,
Galactic evolution.
this is a evolution on a grand scale that
Hmm.
will in theory help us on Earth. I think to uh, significantly expand our perspectives and our capacities and everything we do and are as humans.
Well,
So.
exactly. I mean, especially if you were representing multiple fragments, and having the essence of those, granted going through the one primary lens, but it makes you
Hmm.
much more open to so many other sceneries, if you will.
Right. Right. Yep.
Excellent.
Okay. Next line there is task companions, um, and this comes from the part of the Michael lore is that when uh, fragments are come into a physical plane to begin a grand cycle, that they also align, in addition to their essence twin, they also align with what Michael refers to as a task companion, another essence that they will undertake long-term projects with, and it could be to learn about this or learn about that or whatever. But the term is fairly self-explanatory. But again, the reason that this can be of significance is that the task companion is someone that you're gonna do things, if not at the physical level, you're gonna do things at the soul level that are meaningful with each other. And this is another element where the task companion, if that one is not incarnated while you have a lifetime, that task companion likely will be, in Michael teachings, one of your spirit guides, and will have a great influence on you, just like the essence twin.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so the task companion will be shown in the same way that the essence twin is. It will give the role of the task companion, and whether or not the task companion is incarnated or not incarnated, whether you know the task companion if it is incarnated, or whether you don't, and whether you don't have any plans to meet.
So what does discarnate mean?
I'm sorry?
What is this? Not here?
Not in the physical, yeah.
So my task companion is an artisan who's not in present form.
Say, would you read that again, Sandy? Your task companion is an artisan in what?
He's that person's discarnated.
Not currently incarnated, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Well, fine. That means that task companion is probably serving in a role as one of your spirit guides. Is what it means. Now, what is your primary role?
My primary role is artisan.
Okay. Well, this task companion is also an artisan, so there would be a redoubling of your artisan tendencies from the standpoint of your guidance. What is your essence twin, if I may ask?
Priest.
Okay. All right. Well, then, and is that priest incarnated or not?
Let's see here. It does not say.
Right
Oh, it
under
does.
it.
It says compassionate minus zeal. Male friend younger. That's all it says.
Male friend?
Yes. Younger.
Well, that means that your essence twin is incarnated and somebody you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a friend. Whoever he is a friend of yours.
Gotcha.
And your task companion is not incarnated at the present time.
Right.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. See? So if that probably that task companion would have more influence on you if without being incarnated, because he would be a priest as part of your spirit guide. But this person, whoever it is, apparently is a friend of yours, and perhaps if you know any males who are friends who are
It has to be my son.
okay, well that could be, yeah. Is he inspired to be teaching you about what you should be doing and so forth?
All the time. He is the parent and I am the child. I know
that sounds
nothing.
like a likely candidate.
He's driving me up the proverbial wall.
Okay, well, maybe as he gets older, he'll think you're getting smarter. Who knows? But you can only hope. All right, well, moving on. The next line there is male-female energy ratio. It's just male-female energy, but it's a ratio. Mm-hmm. And so, Sandy, you want to share what your chart says on that?
Yes, I'll be glad to share with you guys. Believe it or not, I'm more male energy, 97 to 3.
97. Wow.
Yeah,
Well, that is really interesting.
Isn't that? I find it
isn't
very
it?
interesting. And I also find it very interesting that I'm 92.8 and she and
Yeah.
I get along
Well,
so well.
yeah. Yeah. You, you two have been telling locker room stories to each other for eons, probably.
Probably. I
Well,
spit like a man.
that is fascinating. Well, the male female energy ratio will have perhaps an indirect effect on the presentation, the energetic presentation in a given lifetime. It doesn't mean somebody who's got a high male energy ratio, uh, um, who is manifesting or has a life in female form, is going to be masculine, but it will mean that person tends to be tends to be not the shrinking violet that someone who is uh, has a higher frequency of female energy. Um,
Is that why I have to shave every morning, Tom?
well, I'm not going to get into that, but anyway,
Sandy, I was swallowing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
the the other piece of that is that is fed by Michael, and I will tell you, there's some channels will say, it relates to how you present. Others will say it relates to um, the frequency with which you present in one form or the other. And so there generally is a consensus, I think, that if you have a high ratio of either male or female, um, then you're gonna more likely than not, you're gonna present in the form of that higher frequency more often than you will in the other form. I've encountered individuals who were 100% um, the one or the other, and so I don't, I think there's a little bit of imbalance there in all likelihood, but each soul picks its own configuration for these things. These things, in theory, are aspects that would be in which the fragment and the essence itself would have some degree of free will choice in terms of how they were going to present through this cycle. And so, Sandy, maybe in the last cycle you were 97 female and 3% male, and you want to even the score this time. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, but
Flipping that switch.
yeah,
Does that
and
make me gay because I like men this lifetime, but yet I have more masculine energy?
that's, I didn't understand you. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm 97.3 on the male energy,
Right,
correct?
right.
But I'm attracted to men.
Of course, yeah. Well, that doesn't mean you're not attracted to men just because you have a high ratio of male female energy. It doesn't mean that at all. It relates primarily to the frequency with which you're probably going to have most of your lifetimes in male form, and so in this lifetime we happen to be gifted with one of your few appearances as a woman, and so that's nice, and but that's
And
what
a
that.
very cute woman at that. I'm just going to tell y'all, even though I'm not on screen, I'm adorable. So
Well,
just to let you know.
okay. Well,
Okay.
anyway.
Poor Tom.
Uh, yeah. Leave me with some kind of right way to go when you make these comments.
Oh no, that's the fun part about being on this show. You never know what I'm going to say.
Right. So anyway, and I'll say for my own part, my primary fragment is 63 male, 37 female, and then I have others that are pretty much the opposite. When you balance it all out, it comes out to something like 52-48, or 51-49. It's very close to an even balance, and there is no there is there's no way, there's no school for saying how that should be done, but generally speaking, the averaging is what is generally thought to be an accurate thing. So across the boards, I'm incarnating uh, uh, about equally in male and female form, and uh, just happened to be male in this one. I've encountered a number of lifetimes in female form that of which I've had past life memories and so forth, and male as well. So um, it's it's something that, and most all of us, if we, as I've said before, most all of us have had lifetimes, male, female, if there's an in between, like there is, we got all kinds of in betweens now, but in the past we've had various in betweens as well. We've probably all experienced those in some degree, and and we also have uh, uh, all incarnated as every race on the planet multiple times. It's at the soul level. There's, to my knowledge, there's little or no preference at all of one race over the other that one is going to show up as, and they all have equally valid and valuable experience for the soul at the soul level and at the human level too. Okay. Any
So,
questions? Go
yeah,
ahead.
so when we incarnate each time, we're picking our race, we're picking our gender, and we're picking basically what role we're going to be playing. Is that correct?
I would say that from what the information that comes from Michael on that is that from the time that you are mid to upper level young soul, or certainly by the time you get to mature soul, you're absolutely picking those things. As you, the soul, as we'll get to in a little while, the soul evolves through different soul ages, and and so at the younger stages of development, the soul may not have enough experience to actually make choices in those regards, and so others councils of elders or whatever may be involved in making some of the choices, but it's not, none of it is against the will of the soul. It's just that at the earlier stages of development, just like picture an infant. An infant who's being breastfed is not necessarily choosing to be breastfed, but certainly is not rejecting it either, unless it can't digest the milk. Um, and so, an infant who is then weaned off of breast milk and is on some sort of baby food, is going to not be picking what his or her diet will be, but as quickly as time goes by, will quickly start showing preferences for one food over another, and so this is the same kind of, this is an analogy of what goes on at the soul level for the exercise of free will choice in the context of how we show up for a given incarnation. And I think most of us uh, at the soul level want all the experiences that this the planet has to offer in human form. So we're going to want to show up as both male and female, both white, black, Asian, uh, uh, Australian, Aboriginal, whatever's out there. We're going to want to try it on, and and we'll find value in all of it.
Well,
Okay.
that's awesome. And that's really cool. So thanks for answering that question. We seem to be having a little technical difficulty with Tammy has disappeared, and I
Mm.
can't seem to get her back in here. She keeps messaging me, and she's like, "I'm back studio," and I do not see her screen in here where I can pop her up in here. So,
Well,
Tammy, if you can hear me, okay, but I am. Yes, I know you say you're in the backstage. I don't see one here. So I can't seem to get Tammy back in here in the studio. So,
Well,
but we'll
sorry about
continue
that.
on.
Obviously, I'm not able to do anything about that, so I
Nope,
hope you
you
all
can't.
sorted
It's
it
just it's me, so
out.
I will try to figure it out. So, let's see here. We are going into the frequency next, right?
Right. The next line is frequency, and this is a frequency scale from 1 to 100, and it this again applies to the frequency of your essence or your soul fragment. It's a vibration, um, and uh, and typically it's a if you just use your common sense, if you think of people who are high strung, moving a mile a minute, and uh, uh, they're sort of action figures and so forth. These are people who are going to tend to be at the higher end of the frequency scale, and uh, and so I've seen people with frequencies in the 90s. What can Sandy? You want to share what yours is on your chart?
Yes. Give me just a second here. I just got Tammy back in the studio. So
Oh, good.
48.
Okay, so yours is 48. I think mine is 47 on my primary. I've got others that are a little bit higher. The average age are a little bit under 50 though, and and I and I know people, as I say, who are. Uh, is Tammy back on now?
I
Yes.
am sorry.
That's all right. Tammy, do you remember what your frequency is?
55.
All right. Well, that's a pretty mellowed out, relaxed frequency too. But you'll see people who are in the 85, 90, even the 90, 95 range. And these are people that you would call, we would call them high strung or type A personalities or whatever. And in other words, a
Well,
frequency level at that of that height would be something that would clearly come through in the physical presentation of the individual.
Hmm.
You would not mistake somebody with a high frequency like that for somebody who's ultra relaxed and laid back. You wouldn't refer to them in that way. And now I've got one fragment that has a frequency of something like 18. And one thing that's interesting about that particular one is that it, uh, per information both from Michael and from another source that I have, and actually multiple other sources, that particular fragment, in essence, alternates during this cycle has alternated between human incarnations and incarnations as a cetacean, primarily as a humpback whale, and
Oh.
so which and the cetacean populations of whales, dolphins, uh, orcas, they express it differently, but their uh, brain power is just as great as, perhaps greater than our own. They can't make things like we do because they don't have arms and legs and hands and so forth. But
it's overrated.
yeah, well, agreed in that context. And one of the things that I've been guided that they do for us is they have been patiently holding
Hmm.
space planet wide within which to allow us to evolve without destroying ourselves and the planet in the process. And that shows a lot of patience on that part, I'd say. Um, but anyway, it's always interested me that particular fragment it's an unusually low frequency, but it certainly is consistent with what we would think of as a frequency of a humpback whale who makes those beautiful songs and so forth that we get recordings of and all
Hmm.
that. And so anyway,
So
any,
Dennis says he's a 55.
I'm sorry.
Dennis says he's a 55
Okay, all right,
frequency.
right, right. Yeah, and I
It's
think
still pretty mellow.
Yeah, it is pretty mellow. I mean that if you get some the healing work that Dennis does, which is remarkable, really. Uh, I would say that somebody who has a frequency of 95 would have a hard time uh, with the focus needed for the kind of work that Dennis does. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, so because that all the work with energy work uh, with chakras and with energy systems in the body requires a lot of concentration. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of intense listening in a sense, and watching in a way that we listen. And that if somebody is so attenuated by their high frequency that they'd be unable probably to do that. Um, they could get a lot of other things done, uh, but probably not that kind of work.
Focus would be
Right,
challenging.
right. Now the last line in the reading there of the essence is what's called previous cycles, and um, and this refers in Michael lore to what Michael calls a grand cycle. Um, so this is, if you remember the chart we had on screen last week and the week before, that implies that you have a number on yours, Sandy. I don't know what it is, but it would be some number of previous cycles, and
10.
10 previous cycles. So that means that before you began this cycle as a incarnate being on Earth, you had already done cycles of physical lifetimes on 10 other planets. And you had not only done those cycles of physical lifetime, but you also had gone through, in Michael's version of things, all the other planes of form beyond the physical plane, the astral, the causal, the higher mental, the messianic, and the Budaic. And then you return to the Tao, or the Godhead, or ground of being, and you had then hung out there for a while, probably got a bit bored and decided you want to go do it again. And you did that, and you've done that. You'd completed 10 of those loops before you even started here on Earth this time around.
Well, that makes sense because I'm an 11 vibration. I'm a 4711, which
Huh.
means I've been here many, many times. So
Well, this
that
is your
really,
11th, according to Michael's reading, this is your 11th grand cycle.
yeah, and 11 means very much a lot to me. So it does that, that makes sense. It
Uh,
totally does. I totally get that.
and and if you imagine the progression, like as I suggested a couple of weeks ago, like a spiral. It
Mm-hmm.
starts on the ground and moves up. You're going up and up and up. So each time you make each loop that you complete on the spiral is another grand cycle. And so with each one of those you having 11, or having being in your 11th grand cycle now, um, are going to have a very different perspective at your current soul age than you would if you were at the same soul age and you were on your first grand cycle. Does it make sense?
No? Can you repeat that? Like, I don't get that.
You don't get
Well,
it, Tammy?
for example, Sandy, I've had 10 previous cycles, and I'm a old 2, and you've had 10 cycles, and what are you?
I don't know. What am I? I'm a
Uh,
4711.
no, hold on. You're a mature 3.
Oh,
So, I think people get. I like what Tom said. Just means you're a slow learner. So, and as in that regards, the way I interpret it, Tom, is Sandy's shown up she's much younger in this lifetime, but she's done the same amount of grand cycles.
Hmm.
And same with Dennis. I find it amazing, like the amount of focused energy Dennis has in this lifetime to be doing the healing work that he does. But
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think that also falls into line with what you were saying with things vamping up too, would it not? Or no, Tom?
yeah, it does. If what I was trying to say was, if you envision the cycle like a loop in a spiral that's
Mm-hmm.
continually rising, the line of movement is continually getting higher and higher. Then each cycle that you do, you can be at the same level within the cycle as you were on the cycle below it, but have a very different perspective than you did at the same level below it, because your perspective is greater and grander
It's
the more
much more
cycles
enriched with all the other experience that you've
right,
had.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Does that help, Sandy?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Um, all right. Well, that completes the top half of the of the reading chart. Um, the second part of it, which we're only going to be able to get a sort of a beginning statement into tonight, um, is called the overleaves, and the overleaves are everything in the bottom half relates to personality aspects,
Mm-hmm.
how you're presenting in your current lifetime, and and so these are these are things that fall on the same as you see on the chart. And I don't know if the folks looking at the show can see the chart well enough to read these various pieces of it. But these things fall on the same axes as the essence aspects: the inspiration, expression, action, and assimilation. And so these same there's a consistency between the other is the point of lining it up that way. And so and each of these aspects has ordinal and cardinal components. Um, and I'll start with just to get our feet wet a little bit. I'll start with the top line there where it says, and overleaves, by the way, in Michael speak, are aspects of personality. Um, um, and the first thing it says is needs. Now, there's nothing filled in there, uh, but um, but the uh, uh, Sandy,
Underneath the
perhaps you could say what your needs are. Can you do that?
Yeah. So what do you? So my needs. What am I? Which one do you want me to read? Like the
You
expression?
got you should have three entries there. Do you have them?
Uh. Well, it says overleads. Okay. So it says needs: adventure, freedom, and power. Ain't that the truth?
Okay. So those the way they're set up on this chart. Excuse me, my throat's getting a little raw here. The way they're set up is adventure, freedom, and power. These are stated in from Michael's perspective in the order of priority they have to you. So your first priority is adventure. Your second priority is freedom, and your third priority is power. But these are the most primary needs in your life of your life, and and will be consistent across your lifetime. Excuse me.
Ooh, spirit's trying to come through you.
Now, does that ring true for you?
Yes, it does. It does ring through. And spirit is trying to talk to you right now because you hear you're getting clogged up in your throat. Like something's trying to, to get your attention and speak through you right now. What do you feel right now in this very moment?
Well, I've got a, you know, I made some dumb moves in my life, and one of them was smoking for 50 some years. So I have issues that in my respiratory system that find their way into my throat. That's what that is.
Okay. See, he's ignoring it. I bet Cecil's coming through you.
So, Tom, I've never actually looked at this particular part that closely before, it seems to me. So, I have
Hmm.
adventure, exchange, and communion.
Okay.
Exchange, what is exchange representing there?
Exchange represents the sharing with others, and in a sort of a partnership way of you know, quid pro quo and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. Um, and and communion represents joinder at a deeper level with others. And your first one was adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I think you certainly fulfill that one pretty well. Um, um,
And then, so then the life quadrants.
the life quadrant.
Yes.
Um, yeah, what does yours say on that, Tammy?
Power.
Okay.
So, what does
Um,
that represent? I mean, what does the life quadrant represent?
that is that is the um, that's what that the love, knowledge, power, support are what Michael says are the choices that one makes at the soul level for every lifetime. And these are this is for your current lifetime only.
Mm-hmm.
And and so you've got power, is that right?
Yeah, I find it interesting that I don't recall ever zooming in on this particular aspect of the chart before.
Uh-huh.
Power
Uh,
seems, I guess I'm trying to, I don't
Tammy,
know.
that is more of an earth sign thing. I mean, I think people that incarnate as earth signs, that's more along their line, like mine's knowledge. So that's an air sign. Your feeling ones would be Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. That would be
Mm-hmm.
your love one. So, I mean, that's like in alignment with your astrology.
well, there should be a consistency between the information here and your astrological chart.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, now, my particular quadrant is love, um, and my needs are freedom, expansion, and expression. So, but and again, they come in order of priority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and everything about that rings true for me. In the power mode, um, these life quadrant aspects are ones that the one you pick is one that you will be, let's say, engaged with. It doesn't mean that you're going to be powerful necessarily in any public or outer way. Power can be just as well at the inner level than at the outer level.
I would
Uh,
definitely say that would have to be inner.
but
I don't, in my life. Mm.
um, so
Are you not the matriarch of your family?
I am, but um, I don't know. I guess I don't. I, w- I, I would have guessed me love or support. I wouldn't
Well,
have
as
guessed
Tom has
power.
told me on many, many aspects, that all of those are within us.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It's just that's the strong one that you picked coming, and it goes along with being an earth sign. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
just it is what it is. What type of what is your sign, Tom?
Gemini.
Gemini,
Gemini?
right?
What are you closer to the Cancer side or are you closer to the earth side?
I'm a June 4.
Oh,
Right in the
that's
middle.
interesting.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Well, that was just very interesting for me as I have missed that entire line for as long as I just somehow have missed that.
All right. Well, we have about a minute left in this broadcast. Actually, it's 9:30 right now.
Yeah.
We'll just stop right there and start again next week?
With the overleaves, yes. Tom, you did an excellent job explaining what can be complicated. I think you did a really good job getting through the essences and stuff and
Well,
explaining all that today. Thank you.
I'm trying to make this in the same vein as adding, subtraction, multiplying, and dividing. So to make it should be easy,
Mm-hmm.
and it should not be something that we really have to memorize. It should be something that it is, in many respects, sort of commonsensical.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something. It's not the end all or be all of anything, but it can be very useful information if it gets in the way of further expansion, then let it go.
Let it go.
That's the lesson.
Well, that was a beautiful note to end on. If it gets in the way of expansion, then let it go.
Right.
I like that. All right.
Well, Tammy, would you like to close us out of this wonderful segment of section 3 of 4 this evening?
Oh, I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you very much, Tom, for sharing with us your knowledge on the Michael teaching in the charts.
My
Until
pleasure.
next week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Bye bye.